All right.
Well, all right, y'all.
Nice.
Thanks, guys. How you doing?
We're doing great.
Good, man.
Good. Good to see you guys.
Good stuff. Good jam.
Thanks.
Yes. So welcome all to Perfect Circuit Chat. And I'm your host, Trovarsi, with BBoyTech Report.
Oh,
And tonight our special guest is POB.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Thank you. Thanks for being on the show, Patrick.
You're welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for letting me in, and gives me something to kind of do as we're all staying at home. So this has been it's been a blast. I'm looking forward to it.
yes,
Very nice.
indeed. Yes, indeed. It's always a good set, man. It's always good to get a chance to kick it with you and chat it up.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about your patch?
Sure. So I'm mostly working at, you can ignore this part. I'm just working
Or
on
to ignore that.
this is the I'm just really focusing on these 3 rows right now, and I've been playing with these for about 6 months, just coming up with different ideas. I'm really trying to learn all the ins and outs of these modules so that I can just kind of play freely and just have a lot of room to experiment, so I'm not so methodical with some of my patches in that. I did that many years ago where I just kind of performed it like a piano concert, and so now I'm just having a lot more flexibility, a lot more places to kind of go in deep and just like sit around in some little hole and play around and then work my way back out. It's really a good challenge for me. So with this patch, I have a lot of room to do that. I have 8 sound sources. I think you only heard about half of them there because I'll save the others for the back end of our show. Yeah, I love this mangrove. It's one of my favorite oscillators because it just has a nice kind of brassy sound to it. And so, like this sound you're hearing here.
Oh, that's my mannequin, right? Is that the company? Okay.
Yeah, that's the Mannequin's Mangrove. And so I like having that. Just gives me this, I don't know, maybe because I played trumpet for so many years.
I was going to say, I think I remember you saying that you played trumpet. So when you say it sounds brassy, it brings me back to that point. And then I remember we were at Perfect Circuit for noise engineering thing, where it was noise engineering and some whiskey.
Yes,
Yeah.
It was the tasting.
It was the tasting. So
Yep.
I remember standing back in the back with Glenn Darcy, and you were playing some noise engineering modules, and we were like, how's he making noise engineering modules sound like brass? Like there was one particular, you had like it was like a huge sort of brass section. I'm like, how's that even possible? So
yeah, that was with the Loquelic Ateritas Presido, the LIP.
mhm.
It has, it's got that nice gritty sound, but then with having a built-in envelope generator in it, I was able to kind of almost create like a staccato type of sound just from all the days of playing horn.
Yeah.
It was like, how do I mimic that, like that sound, like the move that my mouth makes when I make a sound, and how can I relay that into some modular? So maybe that's kind of where some of that thinking was. But
it's dope though. It's dope because it's like you draw from that, and it's kind of dope. It almost creates a signature sort of thing that I hear from your set sometimes. You can move so far away from it and come so far back. You have a thing. I think that's pretty consistent, which is dope. And yet the sets don't sound the same ever. So
well, Corey, you were we did a noise blast with noise engineering around Halloween. It seems like so long ago, but yeah, that's kind of where I had started with a patch around that time, and I sat on it because I'm so familiar with pulling the patches when you're done with the performance. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna hold on to this as long as I can. Which is so hard to do, right? And so I held on to it. I ended up playing it at like modular on the spot, but then it was like a different sound. I'm like, wait a minute. And I had a little more, kind of a little more aggressive kick drums with the BIA. And then I started throwing in some like angry, distortion with the viol renewing, which is here from noise engineering.
Nice.
And Then I started getting really super like almost speedcore with it. And I'm like, whoa, let's scale back a little bit. And then I played it out at Morgan Hendry runs this Paradise City Records in Hollywood. He's got an event there, and I played that.
Yeah.
And so all the way up until probably like 3 weeks ago, I had that patch, and I just kept perfecting it. And it was all off of this case. And so I finally put out a track, which I just put out a couple weeks ago, and then I finally pulled it because I'm like, what else am I going to do? I'm at home. I just don't want it sitting there anymore. Like I gotta explore. So this is actually the second patch I put together with the exact same modules, and it sounds so different than what I've been working on over the past few months. So
nice.
So now, just if you can talk about just how your technique is. So understanding that you're using the same patch and have created all these variations, what are some of the modules and how are you using those to, I guess, I know like, for example, one of them you talked to me about at one point was like the octone and just like, so those kinds of modules that you're using to create.
Yeah. The octone is probably my favorite module, just because maybe it's the melodic part of me that I have. I really like to be able to, like with the brass sound, I can create, it's almost like I'm creating a keyboard just by pressing the 8 sequencer buttons on here. It's an 8-step sequencer. And so just by pressing I put it in tune mode, and then just I can create these nice melodies.
It sounds so good.
And so, yeah, thanks. And, but then I can also throw it into like a sequence mode. Here we go. And I can speed it up and slow it down, which is kind of what I was doing in the beginning of that patch. And then it also takes, a clock in that. So then it has a pendulum mode. It just has so many. What I like, it feels very playable and it's quantized, and I don't have to read the manual to really understand what it can do. And so just having those just being able to feel the notes and play them out like that, as opposed to a keyboard, or I have this module from Sputnik that's 84 HP, and it's so this gives me the chance to say, look, you got 8, you have 8 different tones you've got to kind of work with in a melody. So with that limitation, what kind of melody can you bring with it? And so that's what I really like about the octone, because sometimes I never know where it's going to take me. But that's been the main. That's kind of been the heart of everything, as far as the melodies and also I have a lot of noise engineering in here, because I do some of their demos when they come out with new modules. So so because I do those modules, I've learned them in and out, because you have to learn it almost 100% to be able to put a demo out to show people. And so because of that, that's what inspired me to kind of dig deeper in with the modules I have, and specifically with these. So I'd say, probably half of these are noise engineering, just because I know them really well. But there's some in here that I'm not as familiar with. And so like I have the Fracture from WMD, which I don't know how to use it yet. It's probably the only thing in here where I'm like,
that thing.
Yeah,
it's so good.
Looks to the right, to the Fracture.
Yeah. And it's like, how do I mix this into my sound? Because it just seems to be a little different than what I'm used to. So I'm forcing it into my patch to see what I can come up with. And so that's fun. That's what I've been doing with that. I got the reverb module from Black Hole DSP. The Circadian Rhythms is just great for triggers. The planar. Right here, in this case, I have it connected to my bass line, just to create which is connected to a filter, the Polaris filter, to give this nice. And it's it's the same one you can record to, so I can just hit the play button, and it has the pattern built into it. So yeah.
That reverb is really special. I mean, what did you say is the Erica Synths reverb?
Yeah, it's Erica Synths Black Hole DSP. It's
yeah.
It's on the setting 5 under the reverb. I'm not sure which one that is, but that seems to be best because it has kind of a very atmospheric sound to it.
It does.
Which fits for this patch.
You know, I was going to say about Octone too. I really like Octone, especially when I'm using smaller cases. When I went to Chicago to play at a record shop, I had the Octone in my case because of that same reason. It's simple and versatile enough that I could get some good stuff out of it. And you also have ratcheting and random, which then takes things to a whole nother level. And being able to take it from 8 steps to 4 or 5 or 2 or whatever it is and be able to work that in the show. It's a super versatile, kind of underrated module. I don't know.
Yeah. I remember when you showed me, I was hooked right away. So yeah.
And with the what's interesting is with the pendulum mode, it actually puts you in like a 7/4 time because it does the 8 and reverses the 8. Yeah. So I'm like, well, shoot. Then I started playing a bunch of patches in 7/4, which is okay, let's go with it.
I guess we're there, right? No doubt.
It's like the universe is telling me, hey, you got a 7/4 right here. Just see what happens. And so it kind of threw me off a little bit because I do like having, patterns of 8, patterns of 16, bringing things up, bringing things down, taking out. And I like the transitions with all that, but then having that 7/4 in there to kind of kept me on my toes.
Yeah. And there's a lot of little tricks on it because every step has a trigger out, right? Yeah. So what I've done, one of the things I like to do with the Octone is I'll have 2 different clocks on a switch, right? So, but then I'll have a trigger out on the Octone dictating when the switch goes between one clock division, the other clock division. So then I'll put it on random as it kind of flies around the notes that I've put into the Octone. When it hits that one note with the trigger going out, it triggers the switch to change the clock, that it either speeds up or slows down. It's a pretty cool module to do that. Simple, but like little, if you think through a couple simple patches like that, you could have some incredible stuff going on with it.
Yeah. And I believe you can chain 2 of them together to get 16 steps, which
there you go. That's right. That's true.
Yeah. But so I have 8 different oscillators in here. I haven't played this one yet, but it's Noise Engineering's first ataraxic translatron, which, by the way, when you do demos for Noise Engineering, you really get to learn how to say
right.
So if anybody needs help saying the modules, just let me know and I'll help you out. But like this, I just love their very first one, the ataraxic translatron. That's coming up later. But yeah,
nice.
It's fun. It just kind of gives you this edge and kind of fills a frequency that it's kind of hard to fill sometimes. At least for me. So
it almost sounds like it's a type of, it's a distortion, right? Is that what it is? Or is it?
It's I forgot what they call it. It's
or is it an actual oscillator?
AD, it's an oscillator, but it's got that what do you call it?
It sounds like 8-bit almost. Like it sounds like like it's bit crushed. That sounds good.
Yeah, it's the LFSR is the mode that they have, and it's I think the ataraxic comes from Atari, which is the that makes sense with the kind of the bit.
Yeah, exactly. It does. Yeah. Sounds good.
Cool.
Here, I'll kind of share it on the screen for people to kind of.
Yeah,
that one.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, it's super simple, but it just fills like a lot of areas. I probably wouldn't use it for a melodic thing, but I'd love just to have it just kind of fill in some sound in the back, kind of if you're doing some panning, throw it over and side a little bit. And it's like, what is that thing kind of hanging out there doing?
Yeah.
So.
Nice.
So now are you using the last videos that you shot for them were for the distortion modules, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, they came out with the distortion modules from Terci Ruina was the first one, and then they have the Pura Ruina, which was the last in the series.
Yeah. I'm trying to pull it up here just so people can see.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're wild. They drop like what 3 or 4 different distortion modules, but they all sound like different distortion though. I mean,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, the one's really, it sounds like a guitar distortion pedal, and you got another one that's just distorting certain frequency bands for EQ.
Mm-hmm.
You have some where they call it full wave rectification, which I'm not sure what it means exactly, but there's triple wave rectification on the pure Ruina. It's like, Steven at Noise Engineering, it blows my mind what he can kind of build when it comes to these things. So and then they have the Vile Ruina, which actually is my favorite of the series, just because it can be so aggressive. And I was using it for this sound here. Like, this is the Vile Ruina when I get real high.
It's at laser mode.
Yeah. And
I played with that one when they had their distortion party at Perfect Circuit. So that was the module that I had an opportunity to play. It's good. I like that one a lot. But I think you and I talked about the Pure Arena the other night, and that's like, that now is my new favorite of the distortion series.
Yeah, because you can take what I like to do is just throw a simple sine wave into it, and then just do all the rectifications. But there's 4 different levels. You have a pure one, and then it goes into double and triple, and it creates a distortion like I haven't seen normally. I have it in here, but it's also doubled with the Vile Ruina. So yeah, it's not as easy to detect, but in this particular one, but it is it's pretty cool. And then I have the Kith, since you were talking about those, the Kith Ruina, which is I love it so much on a kick drum that so if you kind of crank up here. So it just gives it that.
It's nice.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm a fan.
So what I have a question about with the noise engineering modules. The one thing I hear well, firstly, it's probably no doubt, and this is just my thought. I don't even know if it's fact, but it feels like there's no doubt that the BIA is their most popular module. But I also hear from people, like there's somebody in the chat that says I get confused with the Latin names, and then if some people don't like the more aggressive sounds, but you seem to be able to tame the aggression or use the aggression in a very musical way. You know what I mean? So, I don't know if you could maybe talk about that a little bit, how you approach sort of, I guess the idea of like they make pretty aggressive sounding modules, but you seem to be able to get very melodic with them.
Yeah, I guess I started doing that when the Mana Satiritas came out, which is it's a square. It starts with a square wave and just gets totally obnoxious after that. And but it's what I like about it is the pitch control. It's defaulted to a fine mode, but if you press and turn, you get the coarse mode. And so when I first got it, I was trying to create these really atmospheric kind of sounds that were rising above the top, and I would spin the pitch knob so fast, so it kind of sound like a it was never really. Every now and then it would stop on a note, and then it would just continue going up, and then creating these really nice long form almost like long LFO sounds with it. That was about as tame as I could get with the Manus, because by default,
that one is wild.
Yeah, it just really takes you up. It's so easy to play and just so.
The funny thing is that if if you dealt with that module, you see POB do this, you like he literally is embodying that sound right there. It's like, it's so. I know what you mean.
Yeah, that one's the hardest to tame. But with the others, maybe I'm listening to some of the resonant sounds when you get into some of the filtering, and and listening to what they do. And, there's melodies in the resonance.
Yeah.
Sometimes they try to play, it's hard to do, but if you try to play melodies in a resonant way, it kind of gives you different sounds that I would normally not expect. And so I don't know, maybe it's just the melodic part of me that just wants to say, how do I fit that into my genre or into my style? So, but it is fun to say, screw it, I'm just going to do a techno set, and I'm going to do what nature intended to do with it, and just like, just kick it in and just let it ride. I think it's a lot of fun to do that too. So
yeah, they got a lot of dope stuff. I was blown away at the amount of modules they have in their catalog. I mean, you could do things you never really think about with some of the stuff in that catalog. So yeah. Well, let me ask you, how'd you end up, because you do either all of their demos or a hell of a lot of their demos, how'd you end up hooking up with noise engineering and kind of coming to this point?
Well, I got to know them over the years. My first NAMM, I remember seeing Steven just in the booth, and he had just a little 2-row case kind of in the side. Everybody was kind of all joining the same booths at the same time at that point. He had just like this little end table, and he gave me like the most robust 10-minute demo of all of his modules, and I was so impressed by it. And I just kind of kept up with him as I was buying his modules. And then I think what they really liked to see was that the videos I put on Instagram at the time, because I really once I started putting a lot of videos on Instagram, I was getting a lot of feedback from people who liked it, and then I was getting more followers, and I was really paying attention to the video part. And so I think they just liked the fact that I cared about video whenever I did my patches. So they thought, well, just give it a shot. Let's see what you can do, And I always enjoy teaching people. Then one of my strengths is of trying to understand, like, it's a challenge for me to try to do 3 things with a demo. Make it the coolest sound you can get, but then for the people who just buy it, like, okay, what is it about? What's about this module that I can take away just by watching? And then the third is, give me everything. I don't want to read the manual, so show me everything that it does. So trying to do those 3 things, we experimented with a couple of them in the beginning, and they just liked that style, and so we just stuck with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
It works out well, man. I think it's a great combination. And like I said, it really displays their modules in a good light for it to be in a situation where it could be typically listening to your set. You're getting a very musical set from a modular set, and you're getting a very versatile set that kind of has its, it has its ebbs and its flows, its mountains and its valleys. You know what I mean? Its peaks and its valleys. So
my favorite part of the demos is being able to jam at the end. I'm like,
well,
here's all the things it does, and now what you just heard, let me throw it in with other modules. And I like that they say, you don't
context.
And they're like, don't use all noise engineering modules. Throw in some other ones in there, because not everybody has everything. And so so that's what I enjoy, is that as I'm building the demo, I'm just doing little sequences or explaining it, and then I throw it in with everything else, and I'm like, okay, whew, that's nuts.
No doubt.
So there was a question earlier in the chat, and it was for somebody who was new and getting into modular. So now that you have this experience, and now you're making the videos, and you are approaching it that way, meaning, how can you show it? How can you, if somebody does not want it, what are some of the things that you recommend for people that are just getting into modular? Like, maybe if it's noise engineering or other modules, or just in general, like, how would you said you enjoy teaching as well. So what would you maybe suggest for like a beginner, what to look for? Maybe make it more general.
What I would do is, get one of these kind of cases here, the 4MS small cases. It's when I first started, I had to buy a 2-row case right off the top, which was a lot of money right off the beginning. So getting something like this and really getting the basics that you need, get your oscillator, your envelope, a VCA, definitely a filter. And the one extra that I bought when I first started was the the Patrick audio sequencer. That was kind of my fun module at the time. Give me a sequencer. I just don't know how to create tones, and that's it. And so that's probably because I started with a sequencer in the very beginning. That's probably why I still continue to this day always build my patches around sequences. And so for me, it just makes a little more sense to start with a sequencer and then build your way out. I think some people start with kick drums or drums and build it in, or maybe kind of drony atmospheric stuff. But for me, I feel like sequencing is my go-to. It's probably because that's where I started. So I wouldn't buy a lot of modules at once. You know, I would definitely get the basics, learn how they function, especially in a small space like that. And then once you know them really, really well, then listen to other people, listen to other YouTube videos, listen to other demos, go on Instagram and like, what is that sound? And don't be bashful about just commenting in there saying, dude, how did you get that sound out of a DPO? Like that's, you know, I always go back to Anthony Baldino because he's really good about making the DPO a kick drum. And it's what? It's a bass module to me, you know, but what do you mean kick drum? And he showed me how he made this awesome kick drum with it. I'm like, it's like I have a new module. And so I'm trying to learn how to replicate that. But had I not asked him about it, I wouldn't be into that space to learn. So I think that commenting on posts and just being more proactive and being engaging with the people that are patching, they love that. I think that it provides really good feedback. And because of all the years of me posting on Instagram and getting people's comments, and that really inspired me to lead me in certain directions just because people were willing to ask questions. And so that's what I would do if you first start out. Just, you know, you can't over ask questions, you know, and I think that really helps define what you're looking for. So when you buy the next module, you're like, okay, now I'm going to get into a granular synth, or, you know, one really good thing now is because 2HP is out, you can get the basic functions of a module without spending too much money. So if you're looking at something big like like the Curses of Terratas Presido, I mean, it's a massive, large, very complex module. I would never recommend it as your first, you know, although the first module, the first VCA I got was the 4MS VCA Matrix.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
and those words shouldn't even, that's like, this is my first at Matrix. That's just, you automatically.
Oh, I used it wrong for about 3 years. I'm like, cool, 16 mutes. That's all I was using it for.
That's right.
I was using it as a mixer. Cool. There's even a patch, like deep into my YouTube channel, I have this patch where I do an entire song with doing nothing but just pressing the mute buttons. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess that's what it's for. And then now that I understand how VCAs work a little bit better, I'm like, oh, okay, now it's the addition of, you know, it makes a lot more sense now to me. But to start with that was probably not a good idea. But I'm sure the salesperson was like, yes.
Good job.
Right. Dive in.
And I didn't have to buy a VCA for like 2 more years.
That's right.
But yeah, that's what I would do. Like, look at the 2HP stuff, comment on people's videos, you know, ask questions. You know, even if you go out and watch people perform, once we get out and talk to people in real life again, you know, it's like, get out there, ask, you know, it's so cool. And you go to a modular on the spot and people just approach the players at the very end and say, you know, how did you do that thing with this? And, you know, and I see a lot of people taking pictures even before the performances. Like, they're going to take a picture before so that when they hear the performer and they see them move their hands in certain places, they can look at the photo and be like, oh, I know what they're playing. I know what they're doing. And so that's also helpful too, is just to have a guide, you know, to all your performances, like link to a modular grid or something so that people can see. Because right now you really don't know everything in the case just from the way it looks. But if I was to provide like a modular grid link, then at least if I was going up here, you would get a general idea of what I was playing.
Right.
Now, one of the questions too, when you're talking about reaching and maneuvering through your case, I'll pop it up here. Is there a good way to position your modules in the case for easy use? For example, oscillators first, or I'm sure everyone. I for one have my own way, but
yeah,
talk about your way of placing them in the case, like, or what you would recommend, or just.
Okay.
To that.
There's two things, which is funny. Well, one, I'm
Sorry.
left-handed. I'm left-handed, so
Yeah.
that's why. And I put a lot of my oscillators up in the top left because it's my left hand. My left being dominant. That's where I have my oscillators. Plus, it gets them out of the way in case I nick one or nudge one or hit one with a cable. It's less likely to happen up here because there's not as many cables. So that's kind of what I put my oscillators more up here, more of the sequencers kind of here. It depends, but as of late, I'll tell you my secret.
Secret time.
As of late, when I play to the camera because if you're watching me, the planar is really a cool module, but if it's sitting over here, you don't get to see it, how cool it is. So if this is the angle, you can see me moving you'll know when I'm making it just has a better impact to the viewer if you can actually see me doing it. So I kind of set up my modules to how it's going to look to the end user. Like, what's the feedback? How's the audience going to get the best experience from the video? So I try to make sure they're able to see the modules that I'm playing and kind of get them in the right spot for the camera.
Interesting. That's a good approach.
That's an interesting way because I think everybody kind of has their own way, but I think you have to kind of know what you got to know yourself a little bit at that point, right? So like for me, because I'm always performing with modular and a groove box, I'll have my modular case right above my groove box. So things that I'm touching a lot tend to be in the bottom row or closer to the edges. You know what I mean? Mostly the dominant hand side, the right side. And maybe if it's 2 rows, most of the stuff is kind of at the like oscillators and effects and stuff that I might touch a lot at the bottom row because it's closer to what I'm touching a lot on the groove box. So between that, I guess it feels more ergonomic that way. So I guess everybody kind of has, I think when I first started too, that I would try to think about the signal flow. I'll have sequencer and then, modulation stuff, or I would try to I've done it a million different ways and some work better than others. You got to know kind of what works for you and what you like to do after a while, because it's going to change, I feel like, too. When you first start.
Yeah. And I also like, because 2 HP modules are really tough to play. Like if I have a 2 HP filter that I'm not going to touch, I'll leave it in the middle. But like in this case, I have this 3-1 2 HP switch, which all I'm doing is I'm just changing the different tempos of the kick drum from like faster to slower. But having that on this edge it's just easier to access by just coming on the side, turning the knob, pulling away. Same with there's like a mute switch. All my mute switches that I have are always like on the side as well, because I kind of go in there and you physically switch it as opposed to digging in to switch something. So maybe because I'm just so like this with my hands that I'm coming into the side, I got these, people always give me trouble for it, but I'm like, I got these straps all the time around my cases because my hands are so big. Sometimes I pull out the clock, or you have all it's trial and error. So so that kind of helps remind me of where I need to go in to turn my to turn different knobs in that, just by having these holes in there too. So it is a collection of many different things, but at least that's kind of how I set things up. And I always like having the mixer on the lower right. It's always my go-to. So if something starts screaming,
interesting.
To have it.
As a lefty, I keep mine to the left, bottom left corner. But I'm left-handed too. Mixer and then sequencer at the bottom.
So that's what I find is interesting. POB, with you being a lefty, that you have your mixer, something that you're potentially going to be touching a lot as you kind of conduct the Eurorack orchestra that you got. Like you have it on your non-dominant hand side, because my mixer is on the bottom right. In my case, but that's because I'm a right-handed guy.
Right.
Yeah, it just seems to work that way for me.
Yeah.
There's another question in the chat here. I'll just throw it up here. They asked, "Are you going to rock the Memetic today? Can you talk about the power of that?" I personally love that module too, so you can talk about that all night long.
Oh my god, that's you know what's funny? We were talking about the demos, and I first started with a couple small 4 HP modules, and get me in the groove of the demos, and then they go, "We have this 16-step sequencer that does 4 channels out of CV and 16 presets, and you can play on the fly and you can reset." Like what? This is insane! All the things they can suddenly do, and so yeah, but it was at first I was trying to think of it like a Renee almost, like, oh, it's a 16-step sequencer, but it just does so much more because it's very playable. You can press and turn to create different CV patterns, and it's also quantized, so you can make melodies out of it. You can stop the sequence and start the sequence again at certain different points, which I really enjoy, the stopping and starting. When I'm using it now in this patch, so I'm just feeding some CV into this bass line here. I'm going to turn them on through the Memetic. So it's just creating like this little 16-step variance. And that's just a Memetic CV. It's actually just set on for random. Like I could stop it completely here. And then if there's one button to hit a shred where it'll just create all sorts of random patterns. So if I just press it for all the channels. So just being able to stop and start and add CV and reset it and just it's very playable, which is what I like the most about it. When I play live, I can just turn the knobs and just have all sorts of fun. A lot of ways I play is I'll have one channel as a sequence, and then the other 3 channels is just CV, random kind of generated CV. So that's because it is quantized. It's nice to have a pattern that I can put in there with other things. Hope that answers the question, Red Times.
Nice. Hey, POB, I used to see you on Instagram a couple years ago. You were doing a thing that I thought was really dope and it's kind of akin to what you're saying with your smaller case, and like, I'm going to have this smaller case and I'm going to learn these modules, and which is a good place to be. Like you get modules, learn the crap out of that module, and then you can learn how to incorporate it into your bigger setup or whatever, and what makes sense. But you were doing something where you were limiting yourself to like 1 row, and then you would do like a week or something with just 1 row of very limited modules and stuff. But you would do like these incredible jams and I would watch that and be like, how is he doing all of that? Right. So was that like a sort of like a phase or time period you went through where you were just kind of limiting yourself, or do you remember what I mean?
Yeah. I remember putting together like a 1 row, like the Make Noise skiff. It was just 1 row, 10 modules. At that point I didn't even know that you could buy like expander power to put in more than 10 modules. I didn't know that you could split the power.
Yeah.
I was afraid it was gonna fry.
Blow up everything, yeah.
You know how it is, it's still, I've been doing this for like 5 years now, and I'm still like, is it this way or this way?
Exactly. That's right.
But at the time, that was probably my first journey into limitations and what can I do. So I was very selective, and I also wanted to fill the full 104 HP as well. I didn't want any spaces, so but I put a big fat elements in there, and then I had like a mute, the mute 4 from Maleco. I had the Wasp filter at that time too, just kind of playing with that, and I believe I was using peaks as my kick at the time. But I wanted to create 10 different patches in like almost 10 different days.
Yeah. I think that was it.
Varieties, and see what I just like force myself to do something completely different every time. So that was really the introduction into limitations for me, and I did grow from that. Because of that, I learned more about, like, I know peaks can do a kick drum really well, and that was you think of the 80-20 that a module can do. Well, 80, you use it 80% of the time for the kick drum, but there's also there's a sequencer. There's all these other things. And so now it forced me to say, you know what? I only had 10 modules, and I'm only on patch 3 of 10. And I'm sick of my kick drum. So what can I do?
That's right. Let's switch it up a bit, right?
Yeah. So it really just forced me to learn those 10 modules back then.
I think that's an excellent challenge. And that's why I wanted to bring it up when I knew we were going to talk to you, because I know that was an exercise, and I was pretty certain that you grew from it, because, it was, if nothing else, it was an exercise in discipline. Right. And so just hearing you talking about it, I know that you learned from it personally as a performer and stuff. So it was a really dope challenge. Like we should do that or something, like make it an actual hashtag challenge and see how many people, like they do a 3-module challenge. I think that what you did is actually even a little more versatile, because you got all these modules. And I think sometimes, like you see on forums, people say, hey, how do you get out of patching the same way every time? Right. And I think that kind of limitation will make you, because you'll be forced to be like, what else can I do with this? You'll probably go read something to be like, oh, this module does this thing too. Let me try it that way and use this as that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now with Instagram and Instagram Live, like I find that my best performances, even if I just start from scratch and just say, okay, here's my 10 modules, I'm just going to, instead of just sitting there and just patching it by yourself, throw it up on Instagram Live. There's something, even though there might be 1 or 2 people, right? There's something about that pressure that trains you to when you perform. And just, it's just 2 or 3 people sometimes that chime in. Just knowing that there might be someone that that kind of gets in there and just hears a little bit of it. And then at the end, you can decide whether you want to save it or not. You can just blow it out and say, you know what, that was dog shit. I'm not, it's out. I'm not going to deal with it. Or you could save it, and one of my 1-row patches turned out to be so good that it ended up on the one of the patch CV albums. It was just 1 row. Yeah, it was on the 3rd album. That was it was pretty cool. So
that's nice. Yeah.
So it can lead in, and I wouldn't be embarrassed by it, because you can always just give it up and end the video and delete it, and no one will ever see it. But
never happened.
What's funny about live is it's kind of one of those things. If it kind of bombs, you're kind of like, me and those 15, 20, 30 people know, like, oh, he ain't real. And you're like, no one speaks of this. I like it. So how'd you, I'm curious, I don't think we've ever talked about it. How'd you get into doing modular from, like, what was that journey like, the entry point for you?
Thank you, yes.
That's a good question. It was a combination of things, without getting too detailed in it, because it's gonna melt my heart. Right at the time where I started getting into modular was when my wife and I, we both were out in LA, and she had taken a job in media in Tampa, so she was going to go out there for a couple of years, and eventually we're like, we're going to get back together, but I know she had to take the job across the country. And so we've been bi-coastal. In fact, we still are now. But the day that I dropped her off at the airport, I went from the airport straight to Big City Music in Studio City and said, what is this? Because my wife is in Tampa. I don't know what I'm doing. I saw Clayton Cell Dweller with his massive synth, and he was showing the Hertz donut, and it was all gritty and cool. And I want to do that. So I walked in there, and Stephanie was in there. She was like, okay, sure. And then she had some, Morgan was there at the time, and he might still be there, but he kind of showed me, and they're like, here's some headphones, just so you can learn, that get good, because I don't want anybody in the store to know that I don't know what I'm doing. And after like half an hour, I'm like, I'm in. And so I started it is the long distance with my wife. And so, and then about, before that, I had also discovered, without going too long, but I discovered my biological parents. And so I learned that my biological mother had a lot of music in her genetics and the background, and there was
Nice.
just like a big musical history there. And then when I discovered who my biological father was, he was very calculated, and he worked on a lot of CAD and AutoCAD stuff, and just like was very technical with things.
Wow, dope.
And so I'm like, So I got the musical warmth on the one side, and I've got this technical thing on the other side, and it kind of
it is.
Hit that genre a little bit. So almost rediscovering who I was in my early 40s.
Very cool.
Defines like this is my instrument because of what I'm learning about who I am halfway through my life. That was such a great thing for me that I felt like, well, this is a moment that, like, my biological mother, she's probably watching now, and she's a big fan. She's just always a big fan and always hangs out. And so she's actually seen me from nothing, where I never touched this at all, to where it is today. So in a way, she's almost seen me like
the growth.
Exactly.
Yeah, that is a super dope story, man. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
really cool story. I love that. Also, I mean, for you to go to a place like, what is this? I just kind of picture busted into place like, hey, I'm here now. Show me the stuff.
Yeah. I'll take one of each.
Yeah, that's right. One of everything. Load the truck. Really dope. Really dope.
Cool.
So let's talk about your new album. You just released it just a week ago, the 22nd, I think, or March.
Yeah, I put out it's actually like a 30-minute patch that it was the culmination of the 5 months of using the same case over and over and over and over and over again. And then I'm like, that's it. If we're in quarantine, I'm going to just patch them. I'm going to do it and get it out there. This is a really great time, so I can just move on to other things. And so I decided just to put it out as a track, and I put it out on Bandcamp. I think it's going to be on Spotify here in the next couple of days. I have an album that I do need to put out. I've been sitting on it for a while, and it's just some artwork I'm trying to finish.
I know that well.
Yeah, but
I got two that I'm sitting on. It's a ridiculous thing. And I've played them out already.
Yeah, and there's the tracks are actually I would say a couple of the tracks are actually the tracks from the jams from the demo videos.
Okay. Yeah.
That just ended up being so good. I'm like, I just put on the track. So I just.
That's right.
Why not?
I'm also taking this time being at home to listen to all the stuff that I'm just recording and deciding, wow, there's like another few albums worth of stuff here. So this is a really good time for me to be re-inspired, to look at all the tracks and just take my time and figure out what is it that I want to start putting out. So this is my year of putting things on Spotify, putting things on Bandcamp. I'm not going to do a super aggressive like album release party right now, because I just want to get this out. My main struggle now is multi-tracking, because everything I've done even to this day has been stereo out. And it gets to be frustrating when you have a great track, but that one melody is like 3 dB too high,
Yeah.
So I've been getting a lot of advice and tips. Scott Sorensen, he's been great. He gave me some really great tips and showed me here's how to multi-track. And so that's really the next step up for me, is being able to split it out so that I can get it remastered and I can get some real legit stuff out there, and then I can have bigger launch parties and have a lot more fun with it. So that's probably the weakest part in my set right now, is just not having the right equipment to mix things out, and then being able to go into the box and tweaking each track to exactly how I want it.
Man, I know that so well. It's a similar struggle. I think that also speaks back to, because I'm relating to what you're saying, it also speaks back to the thing when you talk about beginners and asking questions. You guys, who's ever watching this kind of beginner in this is a community. The community is so helpful, and you'd be amazed at anything that you're running into. The rest of the community are either going to run into, have run into, or there's help there, and everybody is really open. Most people are really open to kind of helping along those lines. So yeah, I can definitely relate to what you're saying. But I have a question too about your live sets, because it's a question that I've asked myself, and both of you actually. the live sets. Have you ever thought about putting out your live sets as like, this 30-minute opus, this 1 hour opus of this particular set and that particular set?
What I've done now is like I'll do a studio, like I'll go out and play live, but then I'll come back, I'll keep it patched, and I'll come back and do a studio version of that same patch that I did live. And then I end up using that as like the tracks I put on YouTube and all that. But hopefully I'll get to that point. Like right now I'm doing a lot of patch from scratch things, which actually might turn out decent. And if I can patch from scratch live and it actually turns out decent, that would be a lot of fun to put out as a live type of album. I haven't thought that much about doing it that way, but it seems like a challenging step to kind of get me out of my comfort zone.
Yeah, it's very cool, man. I think that kind of stuff is cool.
Somebody was asking about how to find your Bandcamp, so I just want to toss it up there and give them the link for that.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, if I could mention, somebody in there was like, about the artwork. If I could just drop a tip, the artwork for the 2 albums that I have coming were the least of my problems, because just like I follow a bunch of musicians on Instagram, I follow a bunch of artists on Instagram. And so anybody that's out there watching it that may struggle with the artwork piece, you may want to think about collaborations with other artists that have you do the music, they do the art. And I think a lot of artists are open to that kind of thing. So it's worth considering. And there's a lot of great art out there on Instagram, both from the musical side and the actual art and painting sort of side, illustrations and stuff.
Yeah, good.
Great way to connect with other artists. I know we were talking about the community, so really quick, it's ironic. Well, not that. The three of us are all members of Southern California Synth Society. So just want to say that, like, I know just to kind of piggyback on what you were saying, Corey, and I know that there's other communities like there's the Northern Synth Society in Michigan, right? I know
North Coast Modular, and then there's New York Synth Society, and
one in Denver,
maybe one in Austin, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there's definitely places for everyone to reach out and get connected.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Modular in a Spot was kind of, I thought, was one of the instrumental things in bringing people together. I've been doing this now for about 5.5 years. And in my first year of learning modular, that's when Modular on the Spot started that summer. And that's really when I got to know so many people in the community here in LA, and it just kind of grew and grew. And now we see so many other events and other communities because of that. So that's always something that's near and dear to me too. I think I help organize it here in LA. And so it's good to give back like that and to see new people. And it's a great way to get people out of their comfort zones. If they've been in the studio and they just nervous about playing out, do a Modular on the Spot. And because once you do one, you're hooked, and then suddenly you're like, okay, I thought I was just going to do sound design when I first started these things, and now it ends up that I'm doing more performing than anything. It's all because I made that step to get out and get out of my studio and play. So any events like that, or meeting with the SoCal Synth Societies or any other of the societies like that, I definitely recommend.
Yep. I agree. I totally agree.
Yes. Well, I just want to ask if any of the listeners, are there any other questions out there that they want to ask POB while we have them on here on the chat? Well, someone's asking if there's any synth folks in Boston.
I'm sure there is.
There has
to be. I bet you if you started searching terms like that,
Instagram for sure, right?
Instagram, you definitely come up with somebody.
The hashtag is a really good way for discovery. Yeah.
Well, I really want to thank you, Patrick, really for coming on and chatting with us and sharing your stories. Like, it's always nice to, I get a chance to chat with you, but it's always nice to chat more and like get to know you a little bit more.
Yeah.
Your music. Glenn is asking, what mixer do you use?
Modular mixer, I'm assuming. I use the WMD performance mixer for this, just because it has the 8 tracks. If I'm doing a smaller set, I'll use the Brillo stereo mix.
Are you using the 10 or 8 channel, the WMD?
It's the 8 channel, and then I have the expander for the mutes.
Got it.
So that way I can turn, it's the switches and mutes like changed everything for me. So I have those in all my sets. But yeah, that combo for me is the ideal combo. It gives me just enough tracks to go in and out and try to do like a 45-minute set within a case like this, just because of the and it's like this mixer is also one of the best panning modules that I know. And the fact that you can aux out into your reverbs and effects and control every channel's audio going into that is super helpful too. And I like the volume controls or the dBu meters. That's for me. I like having a visual reference to how loud it is, because otherwise, I'm like, why is everything so cranked up? I don't remember it. And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, no, I just switched to that mixer myself, and I love it. It's like, and I like how it has that switch, the A/B. So if you send to mono, I like to alternate, like say the hi-hats.
Yeah.
So on channel 5, instead of having just that one channel, I have actually that extra channel to alternate or play them together, like with the switching with the A or B or A and B. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't gotten used to the A/B side, because really, you can do 14 inputs. I mean,
pretty much. I mean, who are you talking to?
Look, as he looks like what?
Yeah. I've been getting wild with it, Patrick. I'll just say that.
And she's just hitting switches all night.
Doing my A/B testing. That's all.
Yeah, that's right. Click, 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 click.
Yeah, to be able to throw those faders. Come on, I like it. That's a great.
No doubt.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, are you ready to play some more for us?
Sure.
All right.
I'll play you out.
Can we get at least a 10-minute jam audio? Or do you have time for that?
Yeah, I'll see where it takes me.
All right. So thank you so much for coming on, and I want to thank everyone for tuning in and chatting and joining the chat. We'll be back next Thursday, and we will see you then. And thank you, Patrick, and I'm going to give it over to you. Are you ready?
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Good chatting, Patrick.
All right, man. Catch you guys later.
Yep.
Ciao.
Thanks, everybody.
I'm going to mute my mic just because.
Okay.
That way you don't hear my uns.
Well,
if you want to hear
All right.
keep them in. But no.
That's right.
Thanks, BBoyTech.
Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Sure.
I love doing these shows with you.
Indeed.
Yes.
I had an idea for somebody else, too. We'll talk after, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, we're having next week Alex from WMD. So
Alex from WMD next week. Come back and check us out again, y'all.
All right, here we go with Patrick.
Cool.